Looks like something scraped off a cafeteria tray. My sister-in-law didn't just say it, she spat it loud enough for every chair around the table to flinch. Then she leaned back, smirking. Even my kids could do better. Silence slammed into the room. Her oldest daughter stiffened. The younger one blinked fast, fighting tears. My husband's jaw tightened. My mother-in-law looked like she wanted to disappear. My pulse thudded in my ears, but my voice stayed steady. I lifted my glass, letting the moment stretch until she felt certain she'd won. Then I said quietly, "I didn't cook tonight, but someone you know did." If you had walked into our lives a few years earlier, you might have thought we were one of those calm, well-balanced families you see in neighborhood brochures. A quiet street on the edge of Portland, 2 houses sitting side by side, kids running back and forth between yards, dinners shared often enough to feel comforting. From the outside, it all looked effortless. I used to believe that too. Back then, I worked in interior design, picking fabrics and layouts for people who wanted their homes to feel warm. Funny how I could do that for strangers, yet inside my own extended family, warmth was something I was constantly stitching together by hand. My husband, steady and good-hearted, tried to keep the peace. His mother, gentle but growing weaker each year, leaned on us more than she admitted. And then there was his sister, demanding dramatic treating, every gathering like a stage built for her convenience. That last part was what slowly unraveled everything. When we first moved in next door to my mother-in-law, I thought it was the perfect setup, close enough to help, far enough to breathe. But the reality was that whenever my sister-in-law visited, she brought her 4 children and immediately drifted off to a screen or a couch, expecting someone else to pick up whatever parenting she dropped. And that someone was almost always me. At first I told myself it wasn't a burden. I loved children, still do. My boys adored their cousins, and I genuinely cared for the 2 younger girls. They clung to me in a way that felt like both trust and longing, the kind that makes you instinctively adjust your voice to be softer, your presence steadier. I didn't question why they needed that so much. I should have. Over time, the routine became a pattern, and the pattern became an expectation. If the kids were loud or messy, I was called. If meals needed cooking, I was asked. If their mother wanted quiet, she slipped away and left them behind, and I, wanting peace, kept saying yes. But saying yes has a cost. That dinner, the one where she insulted a dish she assumed was mine, wasn't the first time she took my kindness and twisted it. It was only the first time she did it so publicly, so proudly, with her daughters sitting right there absorbing every cruel word. I remember glancing at the younger one that night, watching her shoulders fold inward like she already knew what humiliation tasted like. That was when something shifted in me, quietly at first, like a seam coming loose. But once it started, there was no stitching it back. After that dinner, the air between our 2 houses changed. Not suddenly, more like a slow tightening, an invisible thread pulling thinner each day. My sister-in-law pretended nothing had happened. She breezed in and out of her mother's home with the same confidence as always, acting as if the world still spun obediently around her moods. But the children felt it. I felt it. Even my husband felt it. Little things became sharper. Whenever her kids ran over, chaos trailed behind them, not because they were bad, but because they were trying to get attention from someone who rarely looked up. Her 2 boys wrestled loudly in the living room while the younger girls lingered near me, hovering the way kids do when they want comfort but don't want to ask for it. Their mother would just shrug, scrolling on her phone as if parenting were a hobby she'd grown tired of. I tried to keep my distance, but distance is impossible when the kids need you. One afternoon, I found the younger girl sitting on my back steps, tracing a circle in the dust with her shoe. She didn't look up when I opened the door. She just whispered, "Do you think Mom was mad at us that night?" The question hit me so hard I forgot how to breathe for a second. Because that night, the dinner, the insult, she had no idea the dish she mocked was the one her daughters had helped prepare. They had spent almost an hour carefully rinsing vegetables, stirring broth, giggling every time they splashed water on each other. They were proud, so proud, and she crushed that pride without even looking at them. I sat beside her on the step. "I don't think she was mad at you," I said carefully. I think she wasn't thinking about how her words made you feel." The girl swallowed, blinking hard. She never does. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, just a quiet truth from a child old enough to understand she didn't come first in her mother's world. That evening, I told my husband what she said. He rubbed his hands over his face like someone trying to wipe away years of memories, where he'd defended his sister out of habit rather than reason. "It's getting worse," he muttered. "She doesn't even see what she's doing." And then the final shift came. A few days later at school pickup, the younger girl pulled away from her mother and walked straight to me. Her mother didn't notice she was arguing with someone on the phone. When the girl reached me, she held onto my sleeve and whispered, "Can we come to your house tonight? I don't want to mess anything up again." That word again landed like a weight. Humiliation from a parent is one thing, internalizing it is another. Kids shouldn't carry that kind of fear. That was the turning point, not the dinner, not the insult, not even her mother's dismissiveness. It was that quiet plea from a child who no longer believed she could make her own mother happy. And I knew then I couldn't stay neutral anymore. The collapse didn't come with shouting. It came with an announcement dropped casually the way someone might comment on the weather. My sister-in-law walked into her mother's living room one afternoon, dropped her bag on the floor, and said, "I'm getting a divorce. I'll be moving in here next week. The study will be my room. The girls can take the guest space. We'll figure the rest out." Just like that. No discussion, no plan, no concern for anyone but herself. Her mother's mouth fell open. My husband looked like someone had slapped him. The girls froze by the doorway, clutching their backpacks. Then she turned to me, because she always turned to me when she wanted labor disguised as family loyalty. "While I'm here, you'll handle the meals for everyone, okay? Your husband works, I work, Mom's tired. So you can take this on. I'll give you $100 a month. That covers it." The audacity of it was almost breathtaking. I felt something inside me go still, not angry, not shocked, just still in a way that meant the ground had shifted for good. "I have my own home to run," I said quietly. "My own children, my own job. I can't take on cooking and cleaning for your household too." She gave a dismissive laugh. "Part-time isn't a real job. You already cook for your family, just make more. It's not that hard, and I'm paying you. You should be grateful." Grateful. The word nearly made me laugh. It was so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that it broke whatever fragile thread had kept me accommodating her all these years. My husband stepped forward, then something hard in his voice I'd rarely heard aimed at his sister. "Stop talking to her like she works for you. She's done more for your kids than you have lately." That landed. I saw it on her face. But instead of reflecting, she doubled down, arms folded. "You two are unbelievable. I ask for help for once and you attack me." For once. She truly believed that. From that day on, everything spiraled. She moved into her mother's house with piles of boxes, dropping them in hallways, leaving messes everywhere. She disappeared for long stretches, claiming she had things to handle, while the girls sat quietly in the living room waiting for someone to ask about their day. She came home late, irritated, slamming doors. The boys stayed with their father, which only made her mood worse. I stopped stepping in. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Every boundary I set was met with mockery, but I held them anyway. If she wanted meals, she made them. If she wanted childcare, she arranged it. If she wanted quiet, she found it somewhere that didn't involve abandoning her responsibilities. She wasn't used to being told no, especially not by the person she assumed would always absorb her chaos. And as she grew more frustrated, the girls grew more withdrawn. That was when I began taking notes, not to weaponize, not to punish, but to understand the full pattern. A record for myself. A map of how we had arrived at this breaking point, because the truth was becoming clearer by the day. Something was coming, and when it arrived, none of us would be the same. The warning arrived on a gray morning, the kind Portland specializes in quiet heavy, carrying the kind of chill that makes you pause without knowing why. Her mother called me first. "She's coming back today," she whispered, voice trembling. She sounded defeated. Defeated wasn't a word I'd ever associated with my sister-in-law. The woman who strutted through every room like she'd been promised ownership of the air itself did not get defeated. She got louder, she got sharper, she got cruel. But defeated never, until now. By the time afternoon stretched thin, her car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out slowly, hands shoved into her coat pockets, eyes hollowed out in a way I'd never seen. The two younger girls were inside my house, helping my boys build a cardboard fort safe from whatever emotional storm was about to unfold. I watched from the doorway as she dragged herself toward her mother's front steps. I didn't go to her, not yet. She stood there for a moment as if bracing herself, then walked in without knocking. Seconds later, her mother called me again. "Can you come? Please?" I found the two of them in the living room. Her mother sat on the edge of the couch. My sister-in-law stood by the window, arms rigid at her sides like she was holding herself together through sheer force. "They're gone," she said. Her mother blinked. "Who?" "All of them." Her voice cracked. "The boys, the girls, their father has custody now. Full custody. They told the judge they didn't want to come back with me." She turned away from the window, then finally looking at us. The expression on her face wasn't anger or pride or even wounded ego. It was something closer to panic. "They said they're happier without me," she whispered. "Happier." Her mother covered her mouth with shaking hands. I simply stood there, letting the truth settle inside the room like dust on forgotten furniture. My sister-in-law kept talking, voice rising. Their father said he can provide stability, that his place is calmer, that the kids feel more secure there. He told the judge, "I've been distracted, that I'm overwhelmed." Her mother breathed in shakily. "Have you talked to them?" "They don't want to talk to me," she snapped. "They barely looked at me in court." Silence stretched. Then she spun toward me as if searching for someone to blame. "Is this what you wanted?" I didn't answer. "Not yet." She took a step forward, voice cracking with bitterness. "You're always there, always stepping in, always acting like you know my children better than I do." Her mother tried to intervene. "Honey, that's not—" But she didn't hear anything. She only heard the echo of her own humiliation. "You must be thrilled," she hissed, "now that they prefer you. Maybe you'd like to raise them yourself." Something inside me snapped at that, not anger, not defensiveness. Something cleaner. Truth. "I never wanted to replace you," I said quietly. "I wanted them to feel loved." "They were loved," she shouted. I stepped forward, then closing the gap between us, lowering my voice in the way you do when you want someone to hear every syllable. "Loved," I repeated. "Do you remember the dinner? The one where you said the food looked like something scraped off a cafeteria tray?" Her face drained. "You mocked it," I continued. "In front of everyone. In front of your children. You didn't ask who made it. You didn't turn around. You didn't look at their faces." Her jaw twitched. "They made that dinner for you," I said softly. "Your daughters. They were so proud. And you crushed them before they could even hand you the plate." A breath hitched in her throat. Her mother pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "Oh, sweetheart." But my sister-in-law only stared at me, stunned, as if hearing the memory for the first time. They told me later, I continued, that they thought they ruined everything. They thought they embarrassed you. They thought they failed. Her eyes glistened. "Why didn't you tell me I tried? For years I tried, but you never listened. Not to me, not to them." She shook her head weakly, stumbling back a step. "I was stressed. I was juggling everything. You have no idea." "That's true," I said. "I don't know everything you were juggling, but I know what they were juggling. Fear. Uncertainty, the feeling that love had conditions they couldn't meet." Her mother began crying, then quietly tears slipping down her cheeks. My sister-in-law's anger crumbled, replaced by something smaller, something frail. "I didn't mean to hurt them," she whispered. I thought they knew." I exhaled slowly. Children don't know unless you show them. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then her mother cleared her throat, voice trembling. "Honey, there's something else we need to discuss." My sister-in-law looked at her eyes brimming. "What now?" Her mother swallowed hard. "I'm selling the house. I can't manage it anymore. And I'll be moving next door, with them." The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if gravity had shifted. My sister-in-law stared between us, her mother leaning toward me, her brother's partner standing firm, the children next door choosing peace over proximity. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She was alone. Not because we pushed her out, but because she had walked away long before anyone noticed. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I've lost everything," she whispered. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or resentment, just a quiet, aching sort of clarity. You haven't lost everything I said, but you have consequences. You can start over. You can become the person they want to come back to. Her mother nodded slowly. They're still your children. But you have to be their mother, I added gently. Not their critic, not their burden, not their absence. She didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She didn't lash out. She just cried, raw, unguarded, stripped of the persona she'd built to hide behind. For once, she was simply human. Outside, I could hear my boys and her daughters laughing, cardboard swords clashing in the yard. Life was still happening, still waiting, still willing to move forward, but only for the people willing to choose better. My sister-in-law finally lifted her face, eyes swollen but clearer. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? I hesitated, then told her the only truth worth offering. They might, I said quietly, if you give them something real to come back to. In the weeks that followed, the house next door felt different, quieter, calmer, as if the walls themselves were finally allowed to breathe. Her mother settled into the small extension we'd prepared months earlier, grateful for the closeness and relieved to no longer manage a home that swallowed her energy. She spent her afternoons reading with my boys or teaching the younger girls how to sew simple stitches. The laughter drifting through the open window sounded like healing. The girls adjusted to living with their father far more easily than any of us expected. When they visited, they walked in with lighter steps, shoulders no longer curled inward. They helped me cook without looking over their shoulders for criticism. They talked about school projects, new friends, and the quiet comfort of evenings where no one raised their voice in frustration. It was the kind of change you don't notice all at once, just in small, steady glimpses of who they were becoming. My husband and I found ourselves exhaling in ways we hadn't realized we'd been holding in. Our home wasn't bigger, but it felt bigger, more open, more peaceful. Even her mother in her softest moments whispered, "Thank you for giving us a place to land." As for my sister-in-law, she kept her distance. A few short messages sent to her mother. No demands, no chaos. No attempts to drag anyone into her storm. I didn't know whether that meant she was rebuilding or simply retreating. But for the first time, the uncertainty didn't scare me. When I look back now, I realize the breaking point wasn't the insult or the silence that followed, or even the custody ruling. It was that quiet fear in a child's voice asking if love had limits. No family should make a child wonder that. If you've ever had to protect someone from the people who were supposed to love them most, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments and subscribe if you want more true family dramas that remind us what real love should look like.